You know, my friends, I am up at 3 a.m. still playing this game.
Oh boy, 3 a.m.
But I mean, can you really blame me? This is a lot of fun. Yeah, honestly, it's not everything I wanted it to be, but I'm still enjoying the heck out of it. The level I was the most excited for was Los Angeles, because as y'all know, I'm from LA. It's nice to see my stomping grounds being represented in a Tony Hawk game once again. Well, it's not always great, and to be fair, I've heard a lot of criticism and controversy of this game that it's not a loyal recreation of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4, and I think those are some pretty fair criticisms of this game. But I still really like what they did with it, regardless as to whether or not they stuck true to the original. For example, I really like how they kept things fresh with the soundtrack and they added new bands like 100 gecs. However, conversely, they also took out really important bands to the original soundtrack, like the Distillers, like Hello. But I like what's there, and to be fair, I think the criticism that the overall fan base has about it not being a true remake of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4 is a fair criticism, considering that a lot of gaming critique these days is all about whether or not something is too woke or whatever. So if anything, I'm actually quite pleased that the Tony Hawk fanbase is not so dead in the water that they would resort to something like that. So I welcome a criticism of whether or not it's stuck true to the original, even though I don't particularly feel that strongly about it. But in this video, we're going to be focusing on a hypothetical. Is there even a chance that Tony Hawk's Underground 1 and Tony Hawk's Underground 2 will ever be remade in the same fashion as Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1, 2, 3, and 4? And truthfully, do we even want this? Yeah, it sounds like a really attractive idea. Both games were absolutely fantastic, but we need to remember that these games are a product of their time. And unfortunately, there are multiple layers that we need to address when it comes to the very nature of these games, and we do need to consider the logistics as to what it would take to remake these games. So, I'm also interested in a potential Tony Hawk Underground 1 and 2 remake, so let's talk about it. I don't think we could talk about Tony Hawk's Underground 1 and 2 without summarizing the plot of their story modes. So, you are this skater, and you have this close friend named Eric Sparrow, and apparently Chad Muska is coming to town. So you finish getting ready for the skate demo, and this is your character's first exposure to an actual pro skater. And for the most part, as a pro skater, Chad Muska has already made it in life.
Where? Australia?
See? That's how you hook it up. I mean, what's he done? Popped down a few rails and he's traveling the world, living like a king.
Pretty good foreshadowing so far, but your character meets up with Chad Muska, and Chad Muska understands that your character isn't necessarily the richest person on the block. So, he gives you one of his boards for free, and this inspires your character to seek the goal of becoming a pro skater. Following that, your character meets up with Stacy Peralta, one of the original Lords of Dogtown. In this context, Dogtown refers to a very specific section of Venice Beach, California, known for its skateboarding culture and history. Stacy Peralta himself predates Tony Hawk by several years, and was part of a skateboarding crew called the Z-Boys.
Wait, are you the Stacy Peralta?
That's me. You the guy my skaters have been talking about?
Well, I hope so. I'd like to be sponsored by your shop.
Yeah, so would everybody else. I'll tell you what. Make me a sponsor me video. Show me what makes you different than Bobby B down the street, okay? And please don't hand me anything from the same old spots in New Jersey, dude, because I've seen it all.
And this becomes your character's current ambition. Meanwhile, Eric Sparrow is getting himself into hot water with the local drug dealers. Get acquainted with the idea that this is going to be a recurring theme with Eric Sparrow. And so while you need to get footage for your skate video that is not local to New Jersey, Eric Sparrow needs to get out of New Jersey because he's in hot water. This is when we begin to spend time in Manhattan, New York. And coincidentally, there happen to be skaters also filming their own skate video. Clearly, Eric Sparrow won't fuck this up.
Why you beaming? You want a date or something?
I stopped dating dwarfs last week.
Take your soggy mob flips back to Jersey, tweakers.
Hey, let's just go skate. If we tear up your favorite spots, you guys help film us?
And just like that, Stacy Peralta recruits your character to be part of his skate team. And this is super hype, because Stacy Peralta not only hooks you up with all of the skate gear you're gonna need, but also his vintage van, so you can go drive down to Tampa, Florida, and compete in the Tampa Am competition. Clearly Eric Sparrow's not gonna
One busted taillight. Violation. One bad bumper sticker. Big mistake, you punks.
It's not our car, man. We borrowed it. We like cops.
Aren't you white meat supposed to be out fighting real crime? Like figuring out where that missing sprinkled donut went?
This is gonna be the only time where I give Eric Sparrow a free pass, only because ACAB and our player character literally says we like cops. That's pretty cringe. Anyway, the Tampa Am 2004 competition finally arrived. Our player character is so hyped, as this is a time for him to prove to himself and to the overall skating community that he has what it takes to find—
Whoa, easy there, Chief. The list's all checked off.
What? You signed us both up, right?
Whoa.
You weaselly little shit!
Feel free to watch from the bleachers, though.
After being utterly betrayed by Eric Sparrow, we are blessed with the best plot armor from Tony Hawk himself. And just name-dropping Stacy Peralta was just enough for him to sign us up into the Tampa Am competition. After winning the Tampa Am competition, we meet Bam Majura for the first time.
I gotta give it to you, that run was bullshit. No, in a good way, though.
No matter which sponsor we choose for our brand, this is the guy who was in charge of promoting us. Obviously, a very gluttonous bastard, who is only interested in the skating culture because it is a means to make money. If you know who Cameron Collins is, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Hey, check out the ad for the Idaho Kid. This demands a party.
Yeah?
Tell you what, you're the freshie. You're in charge of the party treats.
And best of all, Eric Sparrow is back.
What?
That's right, asshole. This motherfucker is back.
Eric? You're on the team? But how'd you...
With no help from you.
What? Excuse me? Fuck you. The team flies from San Diego to Hawaii, where they're gonna film their first major video. In a previous video, I said that I'd never been to Hawaii before, but I love this level just because of how beautiful it truly is. And you know I am a sucker for the blues and greens in any landscape. Meanwhile, Eric Sparrow and our player character are brainstorming footage to film in Hawaii.
Give me a ring if you need help shooting it. It'd be like old days.
It'd be like old days.
So on the top of a motherfucking hotel building in Hawaii, they film a McTwist off the rooftop over a flying police helicopter. And in my opinion, this is the highlight of the game. And it goes so hard. I mean, just look at this. This is awesome.
Tell me you got that!
Hell yeah, I got it!
I can't believe I did that! That's the best thing I ever filmed!
It's the best thing anybody ever filmed! It's the best thing anybody.
So they fly over to Vancouver, Canada, to which, you guessed it, Eric Sparrow backstabs us once again.
Did I miss my part?
Hard? You weren't even in it, but Eric's part ruled.
Time to introduce our newest pro.
Anybody.
You poached my shots! Where's my footage?
Oh man, I couldn't bring myself to tell you. See, there was this thing at customs.
Lying secret.
So being the Giga Chat that he is, he signs himself up for the pro competition anyway.
You're a pro? They entered you as an amateur.
Someone made a mistake.
And after we win the pro competition, even getting applause from Tony Hawk himself, we run into this weasel again.
I should kick you off the team.
Hey, I just won. What are you talking about?
Well, you got balls as big as boulders, but you pulled it off, so congratulations. Listen, you gotta start thinking about your board graph.
And finally, we make it to Moscow. Surely Eric Sparrow won't follow us all the way to Russia.
Sup, guys?
Later that night, Eric Sparrow gets drunk off his ass and attempts to drive a tank into a building. Now, do you think that Eric Sparrow is going to take accountability for his actions? Do you think Eric Sparrow is going to own up to his mistakes? Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. I mean, not me. This kid doesn't even skate for us anymore. Get the check from the parents.
After we painstakingly make it back to the United States, Eric is living at large back in New Jersey.
Well, look who's here. I was hoping to see you. I never got to thank you for handing me Best New Pro back in Russia.
This motherfucker makes Jack Doherty look like a fucking saint in comparison. Wait a second. Our player character and Stacy Peralta get into a conversation as to what it means to skate.
I've got an idea. I want to do it right this time. Show the kids what skating's really about.
Now you're finally making some sense. What's the plan?
We start our own team.
I like it. Now let's find some guys who share our same philosophy.
And just as these guys are beginning to create a skate video comprised of multiple different pro skaters from across the world, Eric Sparrow makes his presence known one more time.
Oh, how cute. Two little skaters and their ghetto shop.
At this point, it's not a matter of Eric Sparrow being a weasel. He sees himself as above others.
See? That's how you hook it up. I mean, what's he done? Popped down a few rails and he's traveling the world living like a king.
Even flexing his wealth by offering to buy the shop.
I told you. It was never about the money.
Right, I forgot. Mr. Pure, I should have fixed you back in Tampa.
Tell it to your posse. We're through. I've got everything I need.
Not this. Remember? Hawaii.
Oh, now it's personal. And defeating Eric in what is pretty much the final boss of the entire game, it is so satisfying to see him just melt down. What a weaselly little bastard. But see, that's what makes Tony Hawk's Underground so good. It's because of the fact that you have to follow this main character that you yourself create, getting routinely betrayed over and over again by somebody who is supposed to be your best friend. Somebody who sees money as more valuable than the actual lifestyle of skateboarding. And of course, I don't necessarily think that this is the most riveting storytelling that I've ever heard, but it is somewhat believable and it is extremely immersive for doing so. Eric Sparrow is a character whom I like to refer to as a villain you love to hate. A character who you like watching because he's very entertaining, but you do not sympathize with any of his actions or decisions throughout the story. It just makes defeating him and that final boss fight so satisfying. So we just finished summarizing Tony Hawk's Underground 1, but what about Underground 2? Does the story mode of Underground 2 hold up to the standards that we have established in Underground 1? No. You see, Tony Hawk's Underground 2 definitely has better gameplay than Tony Hawk's Underground 1, improving on the formula that made the game so impactful. But the story is so bad, you're just gonna crash into a van. I'm sorry y'all, the joke was right there. So you get abducted, and you're in a dark place. Oh look, it's Eric Sparrow! And this Jason Voorhees wannabe threatens you with a chainsaw, making Eric Sparrow pee his pants.
Hello, butt nugget!
This is gonna be a bumpy ride. In this game, Tony Hawk and Bam Margera invite you to the World Destruction Tour. Basically a Jackass video game, but rated T for teens. Because in 2002, Jackass has gained a level of prominence over the years. When I was young, it was kind of a pastime for me and my friends to watch Jackass and see how far we can get through the movie and try to stomach all of the horrendous acts that they did. And admittedly, yeah, they went pretty far sometimes. But ironically, despite Jackass being the edgier IP, the Tony Hawk's Underground 2 video game was far more popular than the actual Jackass video game.
We're splitting into two teams. I'll be the captain of one team. And the captain of my team will be... Oh, Bill.
Damn it, Bam! The tire jacks ran right up my...
We're gonna talk a lot about Bam later in the video, as I have a lot to say about him for sure. So in typical Jackass fashion, the World Destruction Tour is about getting involved in crazy antics, and there is a point system involved.
Like that. 50 points if you get someone to hose their pants.
Come on, that's sweat your pants.
Woo! And 20 bonus points if you think there's luggage in the trunk.
And as much as I love seeing Eric Sparrow being made the butt of the joke, it's really unfortunate that That's all he's reduced to, is just the butt of the joke. We'll get more into that later. Let's talk about the rest of the plot. As Tony and Bam are trying to select their teammates, they're trying to decide between the player character or Polly Ryan, a kid in a wheelchair. I'm a little conflicted. On the one hand, I like that they included Polly, who's a fun character who is visibly disabled and takes shit from nobody.
You can't decide between me and a kid in a body cast?
You want some of me? Bring it on, bitch!
I mean, I fucking love that. That is some fantastic energy right there. Definitely within the spirit of Jackass. But on the other hand, is Polly the butt of the joke here? I don't think I'm qualified to make a judgment call, and some people may even disagree. Because the overall case that I'm going to make here is that this story did not age well.
Your rack is wicked awesome.
Stop it!
No, you are! Oh!
Nice catch, dumbass!
Knocked out?
Yes! I'm just doing that chick a favor!
And I mean, minus the R slur, this scene is pretty awesome. But then it raises the question as to whether or not Polly is meant to be a character that uplifts the disabled community within the skate culture, or if he's just the butt of the joke. And again, the line is kind of blurry. But I'm not here to tell you what to think, I'm here to raise the question. Anyway, if it feels like I'm glossing over the story, that's because there really isn't a story, even though there kinda is one. This is meant to be a challenge among a bunch of friends doing jackass stunts.
Cut one loose.
Ouch. That means one of us is going home.
It also raises the question as to why are these guys even here? Obviously, it's because Bam kidnapped them all, but ultimately they have agency, right? And they are perfectly capable of saying that this is fucking stupid, right? But you wanna know what this kind of reminds me of, to be honest with you?
60% you will not be here on Friday!
What the fuck did you say to me? Fuck you! Right?
Yes. 3, 29, 1, 2, 3, 30.
You're willing to fucking me in the face? Are you loud? Okay, fuck you, but you won't do it to him?
Kill! 1, 2, 3. I will cut this fucking thing off my head before I let any one of you little bitches make it to that dinner table that don't fucking deserve everybody to be here.
Take a fucking seat. Why are you leaving your team?
Everybody get the fuck up right now, let's
take
go.
A fucking seat. I'm gonna fucking bury your entire team if you don't take a seat. I will stay out here there fucking naked all night long so they all quit. Take a fucking seat. Not me really taking you right now. Not me like you right now. Why the fuck are you on your ass?
And I mean, this is only separated by 20 years.
¿Qué pasa? Welcome to Spain!
Ay, caramba!
Now, I mean, to be fair, this game is not totally devoid of classic Eric Sparrow douchebaggery bullshit.
With the killer session you had here, that puts us back in the lead.
You mean that puts us back in the lead, bro? Since you and I are the newest pros, we getting traded. Thanks for the points, homie, huh?
So after the Barcelona level, yeah, our player character joins the BAM team, which at this point is the losing team. Meanwhile, both of these teams are getting international attention. During this news report, they show a clip of Bam Majura bullying his dad, quite literally bullying. Emphasis on the bull. As a teenager, this scene was fucking hilarious to me, but this is kinda sad to watch knowing what we know about Bam Majura today. Next up is Berlin, and we have to earn points for Bam's team now. And Eric Sparrow makes an ass of himself, serving more as a comedic relief rather than a villain.
Kind of ironic, man. Him nailing a wiener cart? Get it?
But no worries, we're back on Tony's team. Yay, I guess. Suddenly we're introduced to Nigel Beaverhausen, a German-coded version of Nardwar.
Please warm my wiener.
Nigga, no.
And don't get it wrong, he wants in on this action. He wants to privatize this whole entire stunt that they're doing worldwide. And they're having none of that. So as they're flying to their next destination in Sydney, Australia, they make a pit stop to Bangkok, and they don't have a level featured in Bangkok. I feel like this was such a missed opportunity. While they're in Sydney, Australia, the Wheel of Loogie lands, so where they have to have mousetraps on a catapult while our player character is naked. Who came up with this shit? I applaud the creativity at the very least, but it turns out that Phil Majura didn't add the points right, so it's a tie. And Phil Majura says,
I guess I should have carried the one.
And even though we're the one covered in mousetraps, Eric Sparrow is bitching about the possibility of going home even though the teams are tied. And suddenly the most tiniest of Tim Australians shows up.
Look at me, Dad! Tony, oh, bam! Yanks!
Hey, kid.
I can't believe it! I just bought your video!
This starstruck kid who just finished looking for his teddy bear Rosie reveals that Nigel Beaverhausen is selling VHSs of the World Destruction Tour without their permission.
Anyone think the challenge for these two should be who can wreck Beaverhausen the most?
All right. That's cool.
Apparently Eric Sparrow steals Nigel Beaverhausen's clothes, and Bam forces us to wear the clothes. Basically a Nigel Beaverhausen skater skin. After causing some mischief while looking like Nigel Beaverhausen, we get Nigel Beaverhausen into some shenanigans.
What about me? Oh, no, this can't be it. This can't be it. Come on, give me another chance. Guys!
And as awesome as it is to see Eric Sparrow cry, this is the last we're going to see him. However, this is not the last time we're going to be seeing Nigel Beaverhausen, as we're going to be seeing him here in New Orleans as well.
Yes! That's bloody rich.
Look, I want to make you dudes another offer. Now, I've captured your entire competition on video, including everything here in New Orleans.
Let's kill him.
Damn, Mike, that's pretty bold. But Nigel Beaverhausen makes an offer that he can pay for the entire tour if they let him go to the last stop, which is Skatopia.
Here, this might help you decide.
All right, who went to the donkey show?
I don't know.
$21 million? Holy hell. Also, let's look at this list again. What the actual fuck, man? The Wheel of Boogie, they land on the equalizer. This is where they gotta do an all-team stunt that is extremely hardcore, this time involving a police helicopter. Almost in the same vein as the McTwist from the first game, except this time, they unfortunately get arrested. But that doesn't stop our friends in Skatopia, where they end the game by sending it off in a series of explosives. And you know what? It's pretty climactic.
So beautiful. My life finally has a meaning. Ridiculous! I've never seen anything like that before!
But Nigel Beaverhausen's still looking for his tape. After all, it was part of the deal. At least Bam here has a tape to give him. Nigel Beaverhausen foolishly takes the tape and airs it in a live broadcast.
Here is the compelling, nay, gripping story of the World Destruction Tour! Brought to you by Nigel Beaverhausen.
And I mean, it's a pretty solid prank. He was pretty predatory throughout the whole game, so it's just desserts for him. Tony Hawk and Bam Margera hijacked the broadcast and ended off with pantsing him. Now look, it does sound like I don't like this game, but I really do. I love this game. Occasionally the gags and jokes are really funny. The controls of the game are tighter than they were before, even including the freakout feature, which feels so cathartic to pull off when you bail so hard. Plenty of awesome stuff that I really didn't get to show off in this video, like how you can unlock Shrek in this game. And just like Underground 1, the soundtrack is killer. Hey, it even has the Distillers in it. And the Suicide Machines, two of my favorite bands of all time. So, of course I don't hate Tony Hawk's Underground 2, but I'd be lying if I thought that Tony Hawk's Underground 2 was a game that could be reasonably and faithfully remade. Let's talk about why. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Check out some of my music.
Oliver Twist all over again. This week we'll run one more for the boy. It's Saturday, was rise again. But the company won the war. Still
link is in the description below. I just want to say thank you for watching my videos. And now, back to the video. So first, we need to look at the results of the remakes of Pro Skater 1 through 4, because we saw a massive improvement on graphics along with controls that were updated to present day. For example, in the original Tony Hawk Pro Skater, you couldn't even do something as fundamental as a manual, but now that feature is built in with the option to turn it off. However, with these improvements, we saw a lot of important stuff cut from the final releases, such as entire levels like Carnival and Chicago completely removed, as well as levels being moved around and repurposed. The biggest issue arises in Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4, where a vast majority of the goals in the game were either cut or completely altered to fit the 2-minute formula. If you're not in the know as to why this is such a big deal, the original Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4 deviated from the 2-minute goal formula in place of NPCs who all had unique dialogue of their own.
Hey, if you want to open up some new places to skate, try talking to some of the guys with the arrows over their heads.
It also had goals that were not reasonably doable in a 2-minute time span. Granted, the remake does allow you to extend the timer to 1 hour, but that still doesn't fix the rudimentary problem that the remakes are just a shell of their former selves. Many fans argue that the remakes aren't really remakes, but rather cheap imitations of themselves. And while I stated earlier that I don't particularly feel that strongly about it, I do in fact agree. This is not a genuine remake. If anything, these remakes feel more like nostalgia pandering, akin to how Sega tends to milk the Green Hill Zone utter dry. And as aforementioned, the soundtrack has been completely butchered. As a musician myself, this matters immensely to me, because for a lot of people, this video game series was their first exposure to underground music, no pun intended. And speaking from my own experiences, when I was in middle school, Tony Hawk's Underground 1 turned me to the band Blind Iris, a rock band based out of Logan, Utah, with a lot of tasty guitarists that go incredibly hard while also slowing down for a more smooth and gentle listen. For me, Blind Iris defined my Tony Hawk Underground 1 experience, and eventually, I would stumble upon their MySpace, where I followed them and learned about their sophomore album, Meltdown in Lava, although unfortunately, it seems that was their final release. Major bummer. Now, this isn't to say that the remakes didn't include newer and more underground acts as well, but we're talking about bands like the Screaming Females and H2O, both who had at least some level of prominence in the music scene before the release of the remakes. And I'm not saying that the remakes themselves aren't turning players onto new music either, but I find it a bit absurd that they were able to get their hands on Goldfinger, the Ernies, the Dead Kennedys, and the Suicide Machines for the first 2 remakes, but somehow they couldn't get the license to The Addicts, Hot Water Music, Public Enemy, Alien Ant Farm, Flogging Molly, System of a Down, or The Distillers. It is atrocious that they cut so much of the original soundtrack. I agree that there should be new artists on the bill, but they really butchered the original soundtrack and what made it so good. It almost seems like the developers were making room for Logan Byers, a music composer whose IMDb page reveals that he makes music for games so that Twitch streamers can play their games without having to worry about getting a DMCA claim on their VODs. Now, of course, it makes sense as to why they're doing this. They have to adapt to the times, as much of the gaming community is on the internet, and of course, Logan Byers himself is not to blame in this situation. And, to be fair, I've listened to a lot of Logan Byers' music in the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4 remake, and honestly, it's not that bad. It kinda slaps in some cases, not a single bad track for the most part. At the very least, I can safely say that the music Logan Byers contributed to the game sounds like the kind of music that you would find in a Tony Hawk video game, but that's the problem. It just sounds like the kind of music that you would find in a Tony Hawk video game. Because the bands and the music artists that you hear in these soundtracks created these songs with passion and intent. These were written with their very soul and being. And of course, if they happen to be an independent artist, they often wrote these songs with the same working class struggles that consist of eating cup noodles in your your mom's hand-me-down 1994 Ford Econoline. You know, not exactly living at large from the very beginning like Justin Bieber. Another issue that I have is that even though these games were developed 2 decades after their original counterpart and the Thug spin-off, the character customization is completely stripped down. Gone are the days where you could wear a band t-shirt or rock devil horns to scare your Catholic grandpa. Now you're forced to wear clothes or merch from a name brand. And of course, corporate sponsorships like Taco Bell or Butterfinger or McDonald's were always present back then. But now you're forced to engage with it. You don't have an option to wear a Suicide Machines t-shirt. And I know that's small potatoes here, but I resent that. I love that part of the whole game. And it really saddens me that I can't do that here. So then, with all of that said, I cynically believe that all of these problems will carry over into a hypothetical Tony Hawk's Underground 1+2 remake. There's no reason for me to believe otherwise. Clearly Blizzard and by extension Iron Galaxy are far too interested in cutting costs than they are making a faithful recreation of the games we grew to know and love. Because remember, Neversoft shut down in 2014, 20 years after its inception. No wonder Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5 was a train wreck. It was handled by the same people who made Tony Hawk Ride. Yeah, remember how horrible that was?
This thing really can sense any type of motion you're doing with it, and I feel like this is the sort of base station for any other game we can do.
But at least the recent remakes are in better hands than that. But so far, it appears that the developers are not interested in a faithful recreation. They know that the Tony Hawk Pro Skater name is a household name in the video game industry, with Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 garnering the number 7 spot on Metacritic as one of the best video games of all time. They know this game is popular. They know that there is money in this intellectual property. Despite the outrage surrounding the fact that these are not faithful recreations of these cherished video games, there is no profit incentive for a loyal remake. And frankly, if you want a faithful remake, you should be advocating for a port of the originals, because that kind of defeats the purpose of a remake anyway. Because no matter what, a remake of an original game, whether it's good or bad, is going to deviate from its predecessor, as it should. So then that means that if Tony Hawk's Underground 1 and 2 were to see a remake as well, they too would inevitably represent a shell of their former selves. These games will be in the hands of people who did not work on the original games. That means an entirely different vision of these games will be implemented. But as much as we would like a faithful recreation, do we really want a faithful recreation? I would argue no. Because as we've gone over, the stories in Tony Hawk's Underground 1 and 2 are deeply flawed. Since the mid-2000s, we as a society have learned from our edgier days. Edgy humor is cathartic, but we've learned that edgy humor tends to be the most effective when it is punching upward, or in some cases, at ourselves. Think about the recent episode of South Park where Donald Trump was the butt of the joke. This is arguably the most attention the show has received in a very long time, because people are largely affected by the Trump administration. It's funny and cathartic to see Donald Trump depicted in this way, because the idea of such a buffoonish white nationalist leader being openly mocked in a time of constant suffering on primetime TV tends to resonate with people. Now, obviously, the Tony Hawk's Underground remakes do not need to have a satire of the President of the United States or anything political like that. But it is to say that a lot of the humor displayed in the originals don't punch upward. In fact, it tends to punch pretty downward. One such example is in Tony Hawk's Underground 1, where in the Manhattan level you speak to an Asian-coded chef in front of a McDonald's.
My fusion of ancient Japanese cooking techniques and modern foods has won him over. And now I will try to apply this thinking to your skating. Failure will bring disgrace to my name and restaurant.
Not only is he dressed way too fancy to be working at a McDonald's, let alone in a skateboarding video game, but he has the most obviously stereotypically broken English that would make the Sesame Cats and Lady and the Tramp blush.
Accomplishing this will bring great honor to us.
Absolutely disgraceful.
The Tony Hawk video game franchise has a history of stereotypical depictions of the places that they model their levels after. And in my opinion, the levels should be more focused on making you interested in learning more about these places. Instead, it's just very cheap humor in place of better jokes and more potential. On top of that, the story of Tony Hawk's Underground 1 disproportionately overshadows its own sequel. There is character development in the first game. You can sympathize with your own player character. You grow a fuming hatred over Eric Sparrow, wondering what kind of douchebag would repeatedly screw over their own homie for financial gain like that. This storyline is fantastic and needs to stay in a hypothetical Tony Hawk Underground 1 remake. But Tony Hawk's Underground 2 does not complement its predecessor. Instead, it seems to stick out like a sore thumb. It has an identity completely on its own while further stereotyping Australian Aboriginal people and reducing Eric Sparrow to a mere punching bag. No redemption arc, no second attempt to sabotage the player character again, aside from when he swapped teams with us. He just screams like a bitch, eats Nigel Beaverhausen's booty butthole, and we never see him again. And frankly, that's sad. There's so much more potential with Eric Sparrow's shenanigans. The developers seem only interested in the conceptual nostalgia of his character.
I should have fixed you back in Tampa.
I think there is a lot of room for improvement with the originals if they greenlight the development of a hypothetical Tony Hawk's Underground 1 and 2 remake. I think Tony Hawk's Underground 1 should largely remain the same, with maybe a few tweaks here and there. Tony Hawk's Underground 2, on the other hand, needs a complete rewrite. I'm sorry, but the story mode in Tony Hawk's Underground 2 deserves a genuine overhaul that is actually written well. Think about the sheer characterization in Tony Hawk's Underground 1. It has the story arc of our player character going from a nobody to a pro skater with a philosophy of staying true to his roots. It is extremely ironic here because I'm asking the question, why can't the sequel also stay true to its roots and have a storyline that is complementary to its predecessor instead of shoehorning Eric Sparrow into it? Take the Like a Dragon video game spin-off of the Yakuza series, for example. Ichiban Kasuga is the main character of that game, and he gets screwed over, spending 18 years in prison for a murder which he didn't commit. He learns about all of these new anti-Yakuza policies and the Bleach Japan fascist gang who are lobbied by the governor of Tokyo, who is also a former Yakuza whom Ichiban has worked for. After monkey-wrenching Bleach Japan and the governor of Tokyo, the sequel follows our hero working at a job firm trying to get ex-Yakuza into the work field. Because of those aforementioned laws preventing those ex-Yakuza from getting work themselves. He does not dehumanize people for merely being Yakuza sex workers or simply operating in the quote-unquote gray zone. He sees them as people too. This is a consistent trend.
If somebody messes with one of us, they mess with all of us.
And the sequel never loses touch of who the video game is about, because Ichiban has been established as a character with a core philosophy, and so has our player character in Tony Hawk's Underground 1.
I want to do it right this time. Show the kids what skating's really about.
Now you're finally making some sense.
This has been completely abandoned in Tony Hawk's Underground 2. That is the issue here. And unfortunately, you can't truthfully address that in a Tony Hawk Underground 1 and 2 remake unless you tailor the story of the second game to complement the first. Now, exceptions can be made in some instances, like in Grandia 1 and 2, where they take place in the same universe, but the stories are completely separate. You don't need to play the first game in order to play the second. But Tony Hawk's Underground 1 has set a standard so high that the sequel needs to deliver on a follow-up. If Eric Sparrow is going to be in the game, you need to use him the most faithfully out of any other element. And truthfully, given the bare-bones nature of the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 through 4 remakes, how do we know these stories, whether retained or rewritten, are going to even make the final cut to begin with? The first game has a wonderful story about betrayal and staying true to your root, but the second game completely throws the storyline out the window in favor of the trending Jackass-style goals of mischief and chaos. These remakes can't just be a list of maps with new goals like in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4. At the very, very least, they need to capture the spirit of the originals. But even if you do that, people are still not going to like it. Whether they produce a one-to-one recreation or they take creative liberties, people are not going to be pleased with any remake of these games.
But what about me? I had a good storyline and it wasn't a cheap imitation of Jackass. You should remake me, I'm a good game, right?
No, you are not! Tony Hawk's American Wasteland was fucking garbage. Tony Hawk's American Wasteland takes place entirely in Los Angeles, and as an Angelino, I hate the way that they depicted Los Angeles. Your character customization options are so reduced that you can't even pick your gender, and you are forced to go through a romantic plot with Mindy like it's a straight-to-home video Disney classic. The stereotypes are even worse, in fact, flat out dehumanizing Chinese and Chicano cultures.
No joking! You are a fool if you do not wish to learn! You must unlock the powers of two ancient secrets.
Yo, man, you can't come through here unless you've earned it. The Belmont Tunnel is for serious graffiti writers only.
This story follows a kid who moved to LA from somewhere in the Midwest that isn't elaborated on. He has to prove to himself, to some jerk named Boone, bootleg Ichiban Kasuga, and Jared Leto's science experiment gone wrong. It is then when he meets Iggy Van Sant, a middle-aged man who has been living off the radar because of his past criminal activity. Your character collaborates with Iggy to scope for pieces around LA that would go to his property to build a skate ranch much in the same vein as Skatopia. On the way, your player character wins a competition and stupidly name-drops Iggy to Tony Hawk, who snitches Iggy to the police and gets him arrested after he's been in hiding for many years.
What was he wanted for anyway?
You mean what wasn't he wanted for? Parking tickets, bar fights, you name it. The guy's a walking rap sheet. I know who you are!
Thanks. You probably recognize me from winning Am Jam. My first fan.
No, you're the dumbass who got Iggy thrown in jail. I hate you!
Oh!
So basically, Tony Hawk is a narc, and so are you. Anyway, besides all of that, the soundtrack in Tony Hawk's American Wasteland is pretty fucking abysmal, with many of the songs included being covers of much older hardcore songs. You've got bands like Census Fail covering Institutionalized by Suicidal Tendencies, Fall Out Boy covering Suburban Home and I Like Food by Descendants, My Chemical Romance covering Astro Zombies by the Misfits, Emmanuel covering Search and Destroy by Iggy and the Stooges. I mean, Somehow, they managed to get the actual song Rise Above by Black Flag without it being a cover. Not to mention, they've had a majority of these bands in previous soundtracks without them being song covers. And I want to be clear, I'm not hating on bands like My Chemical Romance and Fall Out Boy. I firmly believe that these alternative emo bands get way too much hate, even though I myself am not the biggest fan of them. The issue that I take is that since a lot of these songs are supposed to be songs that are popular in the LA music scene, but they should be having the bands actually playing these songs. And a lot of the bands that are doing these covers are themselves not from LA. And to be fair, neither are the Misfits.
Take your soggy mob flips back to Jersey, tweakers.
But see, that's what I'm talking about. If even Neversoft couldn't be trusted with staying true to the Los Angeles culture in their depiction of it, then why are we even holding this arbitrary standard that Tony Hawk's Underground 1 and 2 need to be remade with complete accuracy? Besides, it's not like it could feasibly happen if you held a gun to the developers' heads. Why, you ask? Because of Bam Margera, that's why.
Fuck you, asphalt. Fuck you, Spike. Fuck you, Jeff. You fuckers never cared about me, man.
Bam Margera's entire identity makes up the DNA of Tony Hawk's Underground 2. This is an inescapable fact. Without Bam Margera and the Jackass identity, there is no Tony Hawk's Underground 2. Even though I just advocated for a complete rewrite of the storyline because of how shitty it is, you fundamentally cannot have Tony Hawk's Underground 2 without Bam and Jackass. Yes, I am contradicting myself, but that's the point. Tony Hawk's Underground 2 is literally unfixable. You see, Bam Margera grew up in a very hands-off family household. He dropped out of school to pursue a career in skateboarding. His father, Phil, was a fun dad who supported his son's ambitions, often filming him skateboarding in his early days through home videos. Bam's childhood was defined by the antics he and his friends would get themselves into, all while skipping school. Feels like high school again. That was nice. Many of these antics were also filmed, which would firmly plant the seeds for what would become the inspiration for Jackass later in his career. Throughout the 90s, Bam saw an abundance of success living off of the plethora of sponsorships, including Nike, while making a name for himself in the skateboarding scene and on television. Bam was firmly planted in the social circles of pro skaters at a young age. Meanwhile, his brother was in a band called CKY, which stands for Can't Kill Yourself. This title would be later adopted in the title of a collection of home videos that Bam and his network of friends sold that included skate clips and dangerous stunts. By this point, Bam Margera paired with Big Brother, a skateboarding magazine better known for its extremely edgy vibe. Perfect for Bam, who couldn't get enough of pushing the boundaries, as Big Brother went on to release VHSs with Bam Margera. He would work with Johnny Knoxville, Wee Man, Steve-O, and a plethora of other people. And this was the beginning of a much larger, lifelong career of this group of friends working together on a TV and movie series, which we all know and love today, called Jackass. It really bears any mention here that Jackass was an international hit among young people like myself all throughout the 2000s. I mean, Jackass was like the highest rated show on MTV at the time outside of the Video Music Awards. This would also promptly put Knoxville, Wee Man, and Steve-O on the map. This show even gained the attention of Joseph Lieberman, better known as the Tipper Gore of the 1990s and 2000s, where he campaigned against it, trying to get it removed. And eventually, Bam would meet Tony Hawk, and even get featured in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. At this point, Bam was no longer an up-and-coming skateboarder. He was a full-blown household name. Not only did Bam have a home embedded in the Tony Hawk video game series, but he would go on to get various additional TV shows on MTV, TBS, and Spike TV, including Viva La Bam, Bam's Unholy Union, Bam's World Domination, Bam's Badass Music Show. I mean, you could truly not escape his reach. He was the skateboarding celebrity which the sun never sets. However, let's narrow in on Viva La Bam for a second. You see, this hyperbolic level of international success surrounded Bam with yes men, further reinforcing his dangerous and oftentimes criminal stunts. So Viva La Bam would become the epitome of his shenanigans and the bullying of his parents. Yes, his parents were usually the butt of the joke on his own TV show, from scaring his mother to physically assaulting his father, all with the cameras rolling.
You know what, Bam?
What?
And there's rich people and kids that are assholes. And I'd rather be a poor guy with a kid that's nice. How about that? Let's go back to the old days.
Well, let's go then and quit bitching about it.
It's up to you to go back to the old days.
But this was what was making Bam and the Margera family a lot of money, further encouraging the destructive and dysfunctional behavior even off camera. Yes, Bam was literally paid a fuck ton of money to just do whatever the hell he wanted. You see, his parents weren't exactly well off, so when Bam became rich and famous through his destructive shenanigans, they were financially codependent on his income. This meant that whenever Bam was harassing or attacking his parents on TV or off camera, they were essentially stuck with him because the abuse they endured was how they made a living. I mean, even when they protested Bam's absurd decisions, they really didn't have a say in the matter because Bam's entire world was defined by his unstoppably chaotic behavior.
I'm going to be an asshole forever.
Well then,
I make money off of it.
I don't know what the fuck I did wrong because I thought I raised you perfect.
However, we cannot talk about Bam Margera without talking about his drug addiction. To varying degrees, people in Bam's life would get involved with excessive alcohol and drug use. Steve-O in particular, who is also featured in the Barcelona level as a special guest, was severely struggling with addiction until 2008. Steve-O has been sober ever since. Meanwhile, Wee Man, also a player character in Tony Hawk's Underground 2, also struggled with addiction, but is actively recovering and is even an outspoken advocate for others to embark on their journeys towards recovery. He's even supported Bam's longtime childhood friend Brandon Novak and his recovery process from addiction. Bam is no stranger to this. Although he didn't immediately begin using substances in his career, the legacy that Bam would define throughout his career was most certainly marked by it. All of the Jackass boys, in one way or another, have had some level of experience with using substances and recovering from substance abuse. They intimately know the struggles of addiction, the humbling process of going to rehab, the occasional relapse, and taking steps towards an active recovery. So it would make sense that the Jackass boys would also know the stigma that is unjustly placed onto recovering addicts. And for that, they've been very supportive of Bam and his eventual recovery. But Bam, on the other hand, has tried numerous times to get off of drugs only to fall right back in. Each of the Jackass boys have tried time and again to reach out and support his recovery. But this would wear thin as time progressed, because in 2022, Paramount would go on to release Jackass Forever, with Bam Margera notably missing. As a condition for the production of this film, Paramount forced the members of Jackass to sign a wellness agreement stating that Bam needed to be sober while on set. This was a major issue because in the past, Bam would show up on the sets of its various TV shows completely plastered and sometimes inebriated beyond recognition. While the production team did film a few segments with Bam, he was ultimately fired from working on Jackass Forever. And following this, Bam filed a lawsuit against the production company to where it would be eventually settled out of court, but these strings of events led to the Jackass boys becoming estranged to Bam Margera. Don't get it twisted though, the Jackass boys do not hate Bam Margera, but they're not exactly homies with him anymore, and thus, Bam Margera's chaotic reputation finally caught up to him.
When you had been kicked out of the movie, I was like, oddly, surprisingly, like campaigning to get you back in the movie. And we were so close, Bam. We had it to a point where you had
I remember.
We were so close.
I know.
I was like writing scripts for you. Be like, tell him this, say this, and it's going to help get you back in the movie. And we got you to a point where you had a Zoom call with Johnny Knoxville, Spike Jones, Jeff Tremaine, and that was specifically the call where they were going to make the decision. You were all but back in, and you got loaded and missed the fucking call.
So what does this have to do with the Tony Hawk remakes? Leading up to the Pro Skater 3 and 4 remakes, there was a lot of discourse centered around whether or not Bam Margera would even be included in the game. After all, he was in the originals, so it would only make sense that he would be in the Pro Skater remakes. Thankfully, we would get an unlockable secret skater that was Bam Margera. As a fan of the Tony Hawk Pro Skater series, I am really grateful to see Bam in the game. Additionally, from checking Bam's Instagram account, he seems to finally be on a path towards recovery. He can be seen skating and having a wonderful time with friends who care about him and with a huge, warm smile on his face. It actually makes me emotional seeing this because there was a time during this multi-decade spiral where Bam almost died. This means that there was a very real chance that these smiles that we're seeing now would have never happened. That said, given that Jackass is part of the DNA of Tony Hawk's Underground 2, I wouldn't exactly blame the Jackass boys for being put off by the potential pitch of returning for being part of the remake. Tony Hawk is interested in a Tony Hawk's Underground 1 and 2 remake, even stating that he will campaign all that he can to get these games made. And while he was talking about Activision and his statement, I think the much bigger challenge here is trying to restore the wounded relationship between the Jackass boys and Bam Margera. Because there is no way a mere map list alone is going to cut it here. We need what made the games retain their identity. Even if the story is completely rewritten, I feel Jackass needs to be a part of that identity in some way. Not to mention, the Jackass boys have expressed some discrepancies with Tony Hawk himself. On episode 125 of Steve-O's Wild Ride, he and Wee Man expressed getting paid pittance for being in Tony Hawk's Underground 2.
Did they pay you a bunch of money? I remember, like, I had a character in Tony Hawk's Underground 2, like, it was like a secret character that you had to, like, find and unlock, and then you'd be Steve-O riding around on a mechanical bull through the game, and, like, to have my character, I got paid $5,000, like, that's
I think I got the exact same thing.
We need to consider that in the context of how well these games sold. Assuming Steve-O and Wee Man did get paid $5,000 each, Because Tony Hawk's Underground 2 sold about 3.62 million units, with the price going more towards $49.99 at the time of its release. That means the game made a whopping $180,963,800. That is not pocket change. That is Scrooge McDuck money. And adjusting for inflation, we're talking about $305,771,994 in 2025. However, this means that both Steve-O and Wee Man made a measly 0.003% each from how well the game sold for. For a couple of guys who had their entire likeliness in the game, I think it's reasonable to conclude that they were screwed over brutally. So if they're gonna be pitched with a potential remake of Tony Hawk's Underground 2, they're gonna probably want to demand a more reasonable cut of the sales margin. And honestly, if they do, I personally wouldn't blame them for it. Because while I understand that they don't exactly do all of this just for the money, it's going to be an uphill battle to present them with the idea that they're gonna have to work for Bam Margera, while also having been historically paid pennies for their parts in the original. Also, Bam, get rid of that Burzum t-shirt. You know Burzum's a Nazi, right? If what I just explained to you feels icky, or maybe even ruined your childhood, then I understand how you feel. That is the disgusting nature of the capitalist system. It arguably makes a mockery of the very idea that this is called Tony Hawk's Underground. And I think it's safe to say that as attractive of an idea as it may be for a possible Tony Hawk's Underground 1 and 2 remake, we're probably not going to end up liking whatever we end up getting. Either we're not going to get what we want out of it, or we're gonna have some really unethical things going on behind the scenes again. That's why, just like in my Sonic Adventure videos that I've made, I strongly recommend that you check out the ROM hacking community. Recently, there's been a couple of cool projects that have been ongoing in development, including BugPro and Rethawed. These are made by fans of the video games, and they're loaded with customizable options that made the original so great. Unfortunately, I can't play these due to hardware limitations, but I urge you to give these a try if you like the Tony Hawk Pro Skater and Tony Hawk Underground series. As for everything else that I've said, I hope that I am wrong in all of my skepticism. I don't want you to think that I am against the remakes, but given everything that we've gone over, I am extremely cautious about this possibility. My hope is that if the remakes come out, that they surpass the originals in quality. I hope lessons are learned from the past so that Activision can come out with something that I'm going to end up putting countless nostalgic hours into. But that remains to be seen. We need the original soundtrack and more new music. We need customizable options for our skater character that isn't just name brand merchandise. We need a much better handle on the story of Tony Hawk's Underground 2. We need a happy and sober Bam Margera that is able to get along with the Jackass boys. We need all parties to be paid a fair and livable wage, regardless of how well the game ends up selling. But I realize that these are all idealistic in a perfect world. One or more or a few of these things are bound to not be fully addressed, which is why I am suspicious of this possibility to begin with. I'd like to be wrong, because if I am, it's gonna be fucking awesome.